Hi, welcome to Old Guys Gentlemen Flex Fountain Pens, episode number 54, I believe. And today I'll be reviewing the brand new Montblanc Meisterstück 149 calligraphy pen. That's a mouthful. I just got it today. I think it was officially released on Labor Day a couple days ago. So very quick delivery through Montblanc USA. And it's a beautiful pen. I'll be covering the unboxing of it. Of course, it's been unboxed at this point, even been written with at this point. But I'll do the unboxing, and then we'll get into writing examples. And I will compare another Montblanc 149 18K firm nib, an extra fine nib. I'll be comparing that with this. Also an Edison Menlo modified nib pen, modified by Richard Binder. And then also a Conklin Crescent 20p. I'm not sure about the date, but it's around the 1920s kind of time period. And what the different kind of flexes are and how this rates against all those other flex pens. This thing is huge. I'm kind of interested to see what's in it. Seems like a big overkill on box size. Oh, by the way, I got to show this off. This is my Grimsmo Brothers Rask pen. Damascus blade. Yeah. Okay. So, back to the box. Whoa. So, we got this from Montblanc, which is I guess that's a return exchange form. Nice little thank you note on the purchase. If I need to return it. Kind of like a voucher without the price on it. Ooh, a nice little card. I guess that's for me to send stuff out to people. That's a more appropriately sized box. Even this is kind of large for it. So here's the box. Meisterstück Calligraphy Flexible Nib Special Edition. Here we have the third box, and in this box got the service guide. It's a pretty extensive service guide. I bet they're really concerned about people springing these nibs, and so there's a lot of information there on feeding them, etc. And even more, using your expression nib. But some marketing guy said, you know, if you make these nibs, half your customers are going to spring them and they're going to be coming back for us too. And this right here almost looks like they wrote on there, but maybe not. All right, opening up the third box. Third, I don't know if this is top. Oh. And there it is. The Montblanc Calligraphy. That's an interesting... oh, I guess that's the insignia for the calligraphy, is those like overlapping figure eights. Looks pretty cool. All right, so we'll go ahead and get into the review. So here's the pen itself, and it looks a lot like, although this is gold trim and this is silver trim, this is my stiff, extra fine Montblanc. I'm looking to see if there's any differences from the outside. Montblanc, Meisterstück, number 149. Montblanc, Meisterstück, number 149. So the same. The only way you know this is flex is because this little sticker, which is coming off right now. Whoa. That's a big nib on there. Kind of like this little design on there. I mean, I'm a big lover of flex nib pens, and this is a big statement of saying I flex compared to that regular nib. This is inked, by the way, but quite a bit different nib. Is the feed any different? Well, I can't tell if they've done anything to the feed holes or anything like that, but at least just by looking at it, they look about the same. I was checking to see if I think the width is the same as well. What does the nib tip look like? Well, very flat on the sides. As far as I could tell, this only came in one size, which surprised me a little bit. People were saying how thin it was, how narrow it was. It looks narrow, but I have other pens that are almost as narrow. So how does that compare? There we go. Well, the nib tips look sort of identical. It is 5 1/8 inches uncapped, which would be a nice, comfortable length. Sometimes I like stuff a little bit longer than that. And these are set up so they can be posted. And I like the feel of that. I like the thickness of this, which is pretty thick. It's over 1/2 inch. Yeah, it looks like about 9/16 if I were guessing. When it's when it's capped, the length is 5 3/4, and when it's posted, it'll be a monster 6 5/8 roughly. Pretty good size nib. The section is only slightly smaller than the barrel, and it's about 1/2 inch. It's a piston filler, just like the other one. So it's just like a 149, but the nib is theoretically quite a bit bigger. Usually when I'm checking out nibs, I do something called a fingernail test. So for instance, now this is my non-flex nib, and I think these are 18 karat. So they'll flex a little bit. So look at the very end. See, I can make that flex just a little bit. So I can get tiny, tiny variations. So now when I check this one, quite a bit more. We'll see what it's like when I write. It seems a little bit more like a medium flex as opposed to full flex. Usually I grade nib flexibility as some flex, so you could get maybe from on a thin, like maybe you can double the size of the line. Medium flex, it takes a little bit of pressure, but not that much pressure. This takes a fair amount of pressure. And so you know what I'm talking about here. Need to finish the subject. So there'd be like no flex or firm, and a little bit of flex, medium flex, full flex, and wet noodle. This particular Conklin Crescent, a tiny pen, but it's okay when you post it. This is nearly a wet noodle pen. So, see that? This is like a wet noodle pen. Lets out a lot of ink. I'm not putting, for that same amount of pressure, getting a little bit. All right, so that's kind of good. The line variation isn't nearly as much as the vintage pen, but it didn't take that much pressure to do that. But the real test will be in the writing. So let's go ahead and do some writing. But first, let's fill it up. I have some Montblanc Sorr. I got this at Selfridges in London, which was a cool place to buy. Very good service, good stock. I'm going to go ahead and fill up the firm 149. I think they'd recommend doing this 3 times and then squeezing some out and then coming back. I'm just going to do 2 times. And the flex pen. The reason for these things are when you get as low as this bottle is, it's hard to get a draw of it because it doesn't cover the whole nib. But this will get you quite a bit further down into the bottle. And then when it gets down into just the drips that are left, you can pour it in this thing, my ink saver, and then suck it out of this hole and easily pour it back in. So, but we're not down to that point yet. Okay, so now for what you've been waiting for is some writing examples. So I'm going to start off first with my other Montblanc 149. This is an extra fine, regular 18 karat nib. It has a little bit of flexibility, but not that much. But I'll show you and then you can compare them as we go through the different pens. What I usually do when I get a pen to check its flex, once I can put ink to the pen, is I do just a little pattern like this with a pretty light touch, and then I just mainly put these lines in here to help with my visibility, what's happening with the line. Really gentle downward stroke, you could hardly see it, A little bit more pressure, a little bit more, a little bit more. I keep adding pressure. That's about as far as I want to put it. This is not a flex nib, but it's a softer gold at 18K. And so you can get this kind of line variation. So I'm guessing that this is probably something like a 3 extra fine. And this is something on the order of maybe a medium. That's pretty decent. The other thing I'll do is these traveling figure eights. Light hand, heavy hand, light hand, heavy hand, light hand, heavy hand. And then I also usually do this little hello using heavier pressure on the downstrokes. A little bit of flex, not that much. When I talk about flex pens, I talk about a firm nib, a somewhat flexy nib, a medium flex, a full flex, and a wet noodle. I'll talk a little bit more about that as I show you the other pens. I would call this a firm nib with some flex, because you can get a little bit of line variation at it. And I do use it that way. So the next pen I'll show you is the nice for that, the Montblanc Flex. Start over here again and do these are very fine lines. This is finer than triple extra fine, I believe. Okay, then let's do more pressure, more pressure. All right, you develop a feel for how much pressure you're willing to put on a nib. I could probably put more pressure on and get wider on that, but that's about as far as I'm comfortable. I can't really quantify that for you. It's just something with experience. Richard Binder is a very well-known person in the fountain pen community, and he has a site that has a lot of resources on it. And so what I do is I write on here and kind of compare what I can get. And he shows when he makes his own nibs. I think he used to do nib work out of his own place, just for himself and for his customers. And now he does it for some other companies. So I think he's backed away a little bit. But he's one of the best people to grind a modern nib, or maybe even a vintage pin, to having very flexible capability. So he has these different line sizes and the stroke measurement, the stroke width. He's got them in columns of his italics, typical Western round nibs, Japanese, which tend to run finer than others, and then metric gel pens, which I do not use. But when I look here, I should have had a clean one for this review. Well, that's almost like a 0.1 millimeter line with it. Wow. So that's like a what he would call a 4 extra fine, or at least between that and 3 extra fine. So between needlepoint and the Binder, 4 extra fine, probably closer to the triple extra fine. But that is fine enough for me. So now how broad can you get? is the question. Broader than that. Broader than that. Broader than that. Yep. I'm going to jump ahead here. I would say a triple broad for extra fine. And this goes all the way up to triple bold plus. And we'll do well, the other thing it has is pretty good spring back. Now what I mean by that is when I lift up, I get smaller lines. And why that's important is if you didn't have that, when I lift up, this would be thicker until the ink ran dry, and then it would get thin. And then you don't get the same kind of contrast that you have. I like it. All right. I'll come back to this pen again, but then let me show you another pen. Now this is that same Richard Binder who modifies nibs. In this case, it's for an Edison Menlo pen for Spencerian. So it's close to a needlepoint, I believe, and it can go pretty wide. So if we do the same sort of comparisons. It's not quite as fine, so maybe this is not needlepoint. Maybe it's more like triple extra fine. That'll vary according to the ink that you're using and the paper and everything else. Yeah, it's definitely thicker than the Montblanc, but not by much. So I put more pressure on here as I go through here. And I'm getting a lot more variation for the pressure I'm putting in. And when you railroad, that's another sign with these feeds that you've probably gone further than what it was really designed for. So I probably would normally, actually for normal, I probably would just go in around here. But this is probably a triple extra fine to, 4 bold plus. And definitely a lot easier. With these modern nibs, when they thin these things down, you've got to be very careful because it would be really easy to spring. And what that means is you end up putting so much pressure on there, it actually bends back. And then you have to send it back to the nib meister, or you got to develop your own capabilities for being able to smooth out a nib again. And how about a little hello. And it also has good spring back like this one does. Maybe even slightly better. But because this takes just a little bit more effort, I feel safer using this pen than this pen, even though I might get a little bit better performance out of this pen. I have probably 40 vintage pens that flex to varying degrees, but they all flex. And this is one of the flexier ones. This is beyond full flex and what I would call wet noodle. And you'll see the difference with that. And this one will be a little bit unfairly more easily seen because it's in black. It's very thin, almost beyond 4x. And start out pretty thin, put more pressure on, and more. I probably don't want to push it too much further than that. So flex is about the same as this, but this is at least a 4 extra fine, and it also goes to 4 for broad. And I found with these vintage nibs, I can spread the tines, you know, that far, and I have not really bent any of the nibs so far. Well, that's not quite true. When I first started doing this, I bent some nibs, but I was able to fix them. And yeah, this is a Conklin Crescent 20p. I think this is, I don't know, somewhere around the 1920s, maybe even before that. Nice little pen. But I really like it when a manufacturer tries to make a flex pen, which is what they did here with the Montblanc Calligraphy. So I'm very happy with this. I'm going to keep this. This amount of flex is more than enough for me for the kind of writing that I do. You know what I should probably do is, how about some foxes and lazy dogs? Okay. I just cannot spell quick today. So it's fairly smooth, maybe some slight feedback. It feels really good in the hand. It's a nice, very well built pen. Would I like to have more flex in it? Sure, but this kind of flexibility right here is more than enough. It's a great pen at a very expensive price. Yeah, I think I spent, it was like 900 and, I forget the exact, 900 something dollars. But I got it within a couple of days. I ordered it on September 2nd and it's September 4th. Pretty cool. So, hope you got some value out of that. And that's it. Thank you for watching. you.